Hi, this is John and I'm in County Cavan. Just spent the last 2 days in this lovely graveyard of Drumlane Abbey doing a survey under funding by Cavan County Council Heritage Office, organised by the Historic Graves Network. We've had a great group here for the last few days, reading all the headstones. We got 207 done, and processed photographs will be online next week. And before I go, I'm going to just do a quick video record for myself, just to remind myself of what we've seen. I think there's been funding to conserve the boundary wall, and that's what we're seeing here, this fresh stonework here. But what you can see here now in the foreground is a round tower, so mid-12th century, I guess, Romanesque, and there's an Augustinian church of some type, which probably started as a Romanesque church and then was converted into this later medieval type. Down there in the field, down below, the local group have had geophys done by Kevin Barton, and that one standing bit of wall is in the middle of what looks like a range of buildings. It's an absolutely beautiful site. There's a lake down there, and there's a lake over here on the other side, and we're looking south, and it's into that Lakelands district in Cavan. It's so beautiful. And what we have here is a very unusual setup. We're north of the graveyard, but it's filled with old round-headed headstones. And what's unusual about that is that they, in your usual medieval parish church, the burials would have been south of the church, and you definitely wouldn't get a lot of high-status burials like we're seeing here in the northern part of the church. Now that whole row of gravestones there, they're all Fitzpatrick's, every single one of them, and they're early, so they're 1780s anyway. So the 1780 group here north of the church. This is a priest's grave here. I think he's a Fitzpatrick too. This one I would call a mead style. It has that mead hood moulding. It's limestone and it's really high quality shallow carving, whereas the other ones here are all a local sandstone, Cavan sandstone I presume, but beautiful. So these Fitzpatricks, and it's interesting listening to the pronunciations. The local Cavan pronunciation of Fitz is Fitch, so I love getting those kind of details. Really nice group north of the graveyard, and an awful lot to learn there. There's a medieval grave slab on the interior wall, and based on a previous survey by Father Hugh Riley, he said it came from somewhere around here, and I'm wondering, are those little stone pads potentially what it was sitting on? It's a possibility anyway. So Fitzpatrick's, and then these a lovely early group here of 3 stones. Their backs are towards me now, but this wheel and cross type. And here you see the front face of each of them. Here lieth the body of, and they follow the same prescription. Here IHS, here lieth the body of. This one is unusual, it's R163 in the survey, but it's cross-shaped. And then this great big recumbent slab behind it. Trying to read him yesterday, and we realised we were reading him upside down, so he's actually facing back that way. He's west facing, and it's a priest, and it's filled with an inscription. The blue tags are our numbers. They'll come off when the survey is, when we've got it all online and we don't have to check any more details. But what struck me, the oldest headstone we got, which was to the south of the church, was 1735, but this is one of the oldest too. I think it's 1740s, and it's right here in the top northeast corner. You rarely get the older headstones in the northeast corner. And here now, the buttresses, you can see are keeping the thing up. And you'd wonder, were the buttresses used from the very early construction? The put-log holes, you can see there, the holes that were part of the scaffolding. There's a slight batter. And now here we are at the eastern end of the southern part of the burial ground of the graveyard. And it's a beaut. Chris is there taking the numbers off. That lovely pinky hue to the sandstone here. Thomas Brady. So we're getting Brady's, Riley's, McGahern's. Look at this one here. This is an absolute beaut. IHS. It has a saltire cross on top and on the sides. It looks to me like it's all from a single slab. And then on the back there's the wheeled cross and a coffin. And then we look down over the wall. There's a break of slope here. I'm thinking this is the original boundary just back there. And then we're looking down over the lake. And it's this area down here I think Kevin Barton did geophys on, and down below in particular in the next field. And that's out onto the island then it's called. It's called the island because it's surrounded on three sides by water, not on this side. But you can see why this would have been a high status ecclesiastical site. You can farm all this, what is it, 20 odd acres, maybe more. And then it's here at the land end where you can, the congregation can come from the parishioners. And it's just nothing but birds. The wee island out there is probably a canoe. And a high status ring fort essentially. So I'm just trying to remember. Yes, I got it, Chris, thanks. Oh yeah, so this is one of the wheeled crosses. He's broken, so he would have been intact, connected to another bit of a slab stuck in the ground. And we've just flipped him over after we read him. And what you've got on the back is a skull and crossbones, an hourglass measuring the sands of time, a bell for when the bell tolls, when you were called, and then what looks like a timber coffin. We'll flip him back again. And there's about 5 of them here, and a lot of them show coffins. And here's one. This is actually the oldest, besides the medieval one I'll show in a minute. This is the oldest of the 18th century, so that's 1735. And that I can't remember the name. This is the same type. This is the lower section of one here. Reading that, we got an age 73 years, just the very bottom, and that matches perfectly with the front side of this wheeled cross. He's very clean because he's been sitting in the soil for a long time. But again, you can see skull and crossbones, the coffin. A very nicely done sands of time hourglass, and then a slightly chipped bell. So he's actually off him there, that lad, so we'll reconnect them. Now the names in County Cavan, Cavan it's a great example. It was planted as part of the Ulster plantation, but the local Irish high status families stayed on in many ways. And one of those families were the Farrellys. And we have a group of Farrellys here. This is a 1740s Farrelly stone. That one, IHS, here lieth the body of Thomas Farrelly, onto the next line, who died. That's Farrelly. This is Farrelly. And a name has been chipped off. So that's representing some kind of dispute over the name of a personal name of a Farrelly and of a townland. And these are Farrellys too. So this is a Farrelly group, all buried here outside the church. So on the other side we have Fitzpatrick's, here we have Farrellys burying. So we're getting groups of higher status landed families. The Farrellys were the co-Arabs for the Gaelic lordship, and the Gaelic lordship then was disputed between the O'Rourke's and the O'Reillys. And then we'll go in and look at this. So we're inside. once the Church of Ireland had a church here until about 1820, and then they moved up to St. Columba's. But once the Church of Ireland moved out, then local families came in and began to bury in here. So we have some 19th century crosses in here, and then and we have a couple of 18th century as well. Look at them. But this is our only medieval grave slab so far. There's a wee one at the gate, if I remember to show. But this is one of those floriated crosses. These really ornate circular crosses, and there's something going on up here as well. But there's no name. We think it's Father Huey said that it's connected to the Farrellys, who would have been kind of second biggest family in the region. Tomb niche there, that high pointed one, there would have been a big family buried there. Probably another one there. This is an OPW site, so there's some curious patching going on. Down into the corner, a lot of McKiernan's buried in here, and then an interesting story of one gent who wanted to be buried in here, and he had to put his foot down and insist on it. He wanted to be buried near the altar, and he made a bit of a project out of it, and he succeeded. Okay, Memento Mori there. Here we have the same Memento Mori we saw outside. Coffin, bell, sands of time, and then there's some kind of coat of arms. And then up here we saw Morton's, and it was 1740s if I remember correctly, here in the corner. So this could be a proper ledger slab, and there could be a grave shaft underneath him back in there, brick lined. So it's not our usual type of graveyard where there's a small medieval parish church. This is tied in with the Augustinian settlement below. Very grand. An awful lot of money invested in it, including in the earlier phase the round tower, which I'm going to look at now. And the round tower is a beaut. Basal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, just over 20 courses of highly dressed ashlar sandstone. Really fantastic. The tradition with the round towers was that the door would face the church that was in use at the time, so it's facing right at us here. So that's the door. The door isn't raised for defence, the door is raised because these structures have no foundations, and they put the door up high so that the building will stay intact without any pressures and strains where they need it to maintain its weight. I think Chris there told me that's 11 metres tall. Would it have been much taller? It should have been. Why wouldn't it be a full one? But I know I'll have to try and see what Tygo Keefe says about it. I think he refers to it in his Round Towers book. But it's an absolute beaut, really high quality sandstone. And then here, Chris had a very interesting question. He said, "What's that, John?" And I think we worked it out over the 2.5 days we were here. This is a priest's grave. IHS is up there at the top. It's facing west. And then there's very shallow inscriptions there that Father Hugh, I couldn't work it out, but Father Hugh he did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Wait now, more than 40 years ago. And he was a Father Owen O'Reilly. So the O'Reillys, high status family. And then what this funny shape is here is that's actually a chalice. And the base of the chalice, and that's the Bible there. So it's ecclesiastical symbols of the church clergy. And then look at this. Now this reminded me so much of the graveyard at home in Ardmore, where we have beautifully well dressed stone forming most of it, and then we also have a bird, some carving of a bird on one of the stones in Ardmore. But here in Drumlane, they have beaten us there. There's two birds. This one is almost like a dove. How can I show it? See the curving sweep of the body there, and up into the head and the beak there. So that's there, and then just here on the prominent bit, there's like a rooster. We'll have a look at it now. It's on the same course. It's on a different stone, but the same course as the one over. And there it is now. There's the bird's body, the beak, legs coming down there. What else is going on? Could there be the back of a pot? There is a story of the cock in the pot, where the bird was dead and in the pot, and then it revived again. And it's a traditional Irish story in terms of our Lord dying and coming back to life again. So that's potentially what's tied in there, but I don't know. We just can't crack it. The cock and the hen, it's called in a few publications online, but I wonder why that wouldn't be a dove there. Then again, I'm not a specialist on those kind of things. So a fantastic few days of stories and information. I think we had at the peak, we had 10, 12 people here, all telling us what they knew about all the people buried here. And while a lot of the headstones in here are 20th or 18th century and 19th century, the families have lingered on and persist and thrive in some cases. And then the people who turn up at these surveys are the ones who know the name of the townlands and know who had this farm and that farm. And before I go, I'll just look at this one as well. I thought this was a beaut. It's a War of Independence cross for John McIntyre, who died in 1921. There's a carving of a flying column volunteer there with the trench coat and the bandolier, the Sam Brown belt and all that. And just an interesting, the colouring of the quartz there. McIntyre, so the son of the skilled craftsman. It anglicised as McIntyre, but McIntyre Asquelga, I think it's a better name. And a fantastic collection, high status 18th century burials north of the church and south of the church, and you're seeing political lines being drawn in a graveyard like this. An absolutely beautiful place. If you go, I don't know, it's about 15 kilometres to the south and 15 kilometres either side, so it's about 15 by 15. It's just all these rolling hills and lakes below, and it's just a wealth of birds. It's just a beautiful county, beautiful place, and this is one of the key parts of it, Drumlane Abbey, County Cavan. Lig me on in Slán.